All right, welcome back, Matt Steinmetz, Darryl the Guru Johnson, and let's go right out to the phone lines. Chris Rose of NFL Network. He also works for John Boy Media. We're going to talk some NFL free agency. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. How are you?
We're doing great. Three pieces of Niners news, if you don't mind. We can kind of go through them one at a time. First is Jimmy Garoppolo, no longer a Niner, first time in 6 years. He's going to the Las Vegas Raiders. And if I said, man, 49ers may have just lost their most proven quarterback, what would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, record-wise, you're 100% accurate, right? But listen, the reason we all know that the Niners made the trade, spending 3 first-rounders, to move up to number 3 was because they felt like they needed to have a difference maker at that position. Now, we can sit here and argue all day as to whether or not that's accurate, right? Mm-hmm. Particularly in the NFC and the way it rolls these days, right? If Brock Purdy's healthy, I don't know if they end up beating the Eagles, but they certainly would feel comfortable with him in the driver's seat moving forward, I think, right? Can we all agree on that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So where does that leave us if we're the Niners? It's not like the Jimmy Garoppolo news is any big shock. I mean, Lynch and Shanahan said it we think that this is the time for everybody to move on. And so this just happens to be the day that he's moving on. That's all. But they're going to have to get somebody else in there. They just are. They can't rely on Brock Purdy being healthy. Certainly not to start the season. And I don't know if he will be at any point in the season, right? They're just not going to know for a little while. And that, Trey Lance hasn't played football in freaking 4 years. So do you really want to run the rest of that team out there? They just made a great addition today with Hargrave. I just don't. They've got to get somebody in there who could at least handle the controls. I don't know if that's Jacoby Brissett. I don't know who it is, but they have to go somewhere.
Chris, I agree with you, but listen to what you're saying, and I've had those same thoughts. Kyle Shanahan moved mountains to move up in the draft and bring Trey Lance here. How can we all be robbed of seeing what he can do? And we got a little sprinkle of it, but let me tell you something, Chris. I don't know what they were saying where you're from, but out here, he didn't look like he had the goods. Like, are you shocked that Kyle would just attach his wagon to Trey Lance, and then we're talking Brock Purdy?
Yeah, but Trey Lance was the guy who was going to be at the helm until he got hurt. I mean, he was the starting quarterback. He was the starting quarterback. I didn't agree with it. I was pleasantly surprised for Niners fans when they brought Jimmy G back last year, because I thought that he was the best option for them. And then Brock Purdy, I mean, come on. Not one person in the NFL who was like, dude, they got to steal with the last pick. Not one. Most of us didn't even remember where Brock Purdy ended up until he walked into the game.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not a shot at Brock Purdy. That's just a fact here. So, yes, they can still say that they believe in Trey Lance, and perhaps they do, but I think they need a guy who can make some plays, who can be Jimmy G-ish, and because there's way too much talent on this team to not give it at least a shot to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. And you don't need a dude, you don't need Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow to weave your way through the NFC playoffs. You just don't right now. I mean, look at the list of guys, and it's about to lose possibly Aaron Rodgers, too. So, really, who are the best quarterbacks in the NFC right now?
Jalen Hurts is probably one.
Okay.
I'm not big on Dak, but he's on the list.
Okay, but I mean, that's right. He's okay.
Right.
Geno was great last year, but would you really want to hitch your wagon to him? Kirk Cousins? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's a big difference, really, between the NFC and the AFC. And I think, the NFC, I feel like you feel like you got a chance to get to the Super Bowl if you can maneuver. The AFC, it feels like, well, you better have a big boy, otherwise you're not going anywhere.
Well, you could win a game, I think.
Sure.
But that's the difference here, is that I think the Niners situation, you might say, okay, well, what happens if we have to try and beat Patrick Mahomes again, or we have to try and beat Joe Burrow, or, somebody of that nature? Well, it's only 60 minutes of football. Y'all had them beat in Super Bowl 54. You had them beat with 9 minutes to go. Just didn't work out, and some people say, well, hold on here. What about, if Jimmy G is better, if he hits Emmanuel Sanders downfield, then we win the Super Bowl. Well, yeah, I get it. I understand it. But you were in position to win with a guy who's not close talent-wise to Jimmy Garoppolo. That's why, I'm watching right now NFL Free Agency Frenzy on our network, on NFL Network, and they were just rolling some Jacoby Brissett video. I think he actually might be a perfect fit for them.
Wow. Yeah, we'll see. Let me ask you this, Chris, another quarterback situation. I don't know Lamar Jackson, but I told my partner I'm not a fan of the throwing aspect of his game. But I do know this. The league, the world knows Deshaun Watson shouldn't have got that contract. But you know what, Chris? He did. And I guess I'm a little disappointed in Lamar for using that as the barometer. Like, dude, just look around and understand. But are you surprised? Because I feel like he's playing himself, and I don't like the collusion aspect, Chris. But what are you making of what's going on with Lamar Jackson, how he's handling, and the Ravens?
Well, it's bizarre. Listen, you are worth exactly what somebody will give you. And the Ravens have actually, in my opinion, kind of done Lamar a favor, right? They said, go out, and if you can get somebody to give you what you are looking for, we will take 2 first-round picks. That's what he said, right?
Yep.
The difference here is, once again, we can argue all day as to whether it's right or wrong, or Deshaun Watson had leverage. He had the leverage. He had multiple teams that were bidding on his services, including one that hasn't had a quarterback since Bernie Kosar in the mid-'80s. So they were desperate. So that's why they did that. Okay? That's what fuels business. Now, is anybody out there willing to pay $220 million, $200 million guaranteed for Lamar? He has a chance to go find that right now. Now, do I think he should have an agent do it? Yes, I do. I do. Because it's very difficult to sit in a room. Like, the worst thing in baseball is when there's arbitration hearings, right? Because the player has to sit in the room and they have to hear what their bosses don't like about them and why they're not worth a certain amount of money. Who the hell would want to sit across the desk from Lamar Jackson and tell him to his face why he's not worth money? Like, that's not comfortable for anybody. So, I don't know. I think it's worth it that he would have somebody negotiate on his behalf. We're talking about big-time, life-changing CEO-type money for him. You want to make sure that you're getting it done right.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Hey, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Free agency off to a fast start. It's going to be exciting, no doubt about it.
Always is, guys. Appreciate the time.
Yes, sir. Chris Rose, NFL Network. Joining us on 95.7 The Game.